Everybody, it's the Cryptid Huntress. I'm Jessica Jones. Gosh, I was just checking out the chat room. We've got a great chat today. Thank you guys for being here. We are going to have a really great show today. We're going to be talking about werewolves from World War II. And yes, they may have been utilizing werewolves during the war. And there's a lot of debate about that and a lot of hidden history that we're going to discuss today on this show. And of course, I have my resident werewolf here with me today. We have Dr. Dennis Carroll here in the studio, of course, y'all. We have to bring Dennis on today to talk about these, I'm going to say, German SS werewolves, and also there were werewolves allegedly. There's at least one case of a battle that took place between Russia and Finland, and they call it the Winter War of 1939. And allegedly, potentially, let's say potentially, some werewolves came in, maybe Dogman, maybe Bearzillas, I don't know, came in and wiped out an entire troop of Russian soldiers. And we're going to be talking about that today. Y'all, this is wild. The Black Forest as well. Dennis has got information on the Black Forest. It's wild. It's wild. And it does involve occult activity. And my favorite thing, werewolves. And yes, I am going to have a werewolf security team one day. It's coming. It's coming, y'all. All right. Well, if you guys would like to check out my archives and go check out my social media links, whatever y'all would like to dig in about the Cryptid Huntress, I'll go over to my website. That's thecryptidhuntress.com. You can find all of my shows archived over there, and the calendar of events that I have coming up are all on my web. But yeah, the next event will be the Georgia Bigfoot Conference. You guys come and see me in Demarest, Georgia. That is March the 22nd. Okay, so that's the next big event, and I can't wait. We're gonna have a great lineup of folks going to be at that. So there's that, and also I do have a Patreon if you guys would like to support the show and my work, and I have a Etsy shop as well. It's called War Woman Goods. You guys can find all that on my website, and so yeah. Thank you guys so much for all your support. You guys are the best, and I do have the best chat on the internet by far. And Dennis has got a great one too, of course. I know Dennis has got a great one, but I like to brag, okay, about my chat room because it is amazing. Don't be scared to leave comments, y'all. Come in and join the chat. I have wonderful moderators. You guys are the best. Thank y'all for being here today. And let's get the show on the road because we have so much to talk about. And I can't wait. This could be a pretty controversial topic, but what's not controversial over here on this channel? Okay, so we say it like we mean it, and we are still learning, living and learning every day, and that's doing it together with you guys. So today we are exploring the werewolves of World War II from the schmotzy. I'm just kidding. I always like to say schmotzy. The SS werewolves who terrorized Allied soldiers towards the end of the war as a last-ditch strategy out of desperation. Now, that was an actual troop, okay, a unit. They call themselves the werewolves, but some people think maybe they were actual werewolves too. Some of them could have been, but there was, they did terrorize Allied soldiers. This was towards the end of the war, and even after the war, they were still going after people like a guerrilla group and picking off people one by one, y'all. And it's not funny. It's really sad, but they were called the werewolves. And we're also going to be talking about the potential werewolf attack of 1939 in Finland against those Russian soldiers. That goes deep. We're going to talk about the Black Forest as well, where German SS soldiers were slaughtered in the Black Forest. The suspects were either werewolves or vampires. Okay. And man, we have so much more to talk about. Dennis and I were just kind of catching up before the show started. And you guys, he is a wealth of knowledge. You know, Dennis has decades of experience in the paranormal, the supernatural, and cryptids, UFOs, demonology, and werewolves. And I like to say he's my resident werewolf. Please help me welcome to the show our good friend, Dr. Dennis Carroll. Hey, Dennis.
Good afternoon.
How you feeling?
I hope it's not a full moon today.
I think it is. Oh, no.
It's always perfect time to talk about werewolves, definitely. One of my all-time favorite subjects, and I was mentioning to you earlier, I'm still getting a lot of feedback from that show we did on the Anderson werewolf, where I live here in Anderson. So that was very interesting as well. But you know, Jessica, werewolves have been prowling outside the outside perimeter of mankind for a long time. They were feared around the campfires of the early people. You didn't go out at night for the fear of running into werewolves and things like that. So they're still deep in our conscious. We've never really left the werewolves behind.
Oh no, they're in our midst. And it's one of my favorite topics, and I love having you here with me to talk about werewolves. You are the resident werewolf over here, resident werewolf and resident werewolf expert on the Cryptid Hunters channel, Dennis. And you know so much about it. And you know, Anderson is, you know, that's your hometown. That's where you grew up. And I've got my suspicions, Dennis. Are you that werewolf?
It might have been me, but I'm not confessing anything. Anyway, yeah, the werewolf is fascinating, you know, and I've done a lot of research going back to. My father was a participant in World War II, and so I have always been interested in some of the things that took place during World War II, and some of the most fascinating things are what we call the supernatural aspects of World War II. There's a lot of weird stuff went on, and we'll probably have to do a show on that one day on other things besides just the werewolves. You had vampire activity too, supposedly going on. You had demon activity. The list goes on. You even had some reports of Bigfoot type creatures, type World War II. So we'll talk about that one day too. But the werewolf is the most interesting. He's my favorite. And like you said, if I had, detachment of security, they definitely would be werewolves. I mean, just think about it. Even if you had a werewolf buddy, you could keep your enemies definitely in line with that.
I mean, I think they would make the perfect super soldier for sure. And speaking of super soldiers, we have Arkeem Ra in the chat. What's up, Arkeem? He says, John Whitberg's book, The Man with the Periwinkle Eyes, gives real-life examples of cryptids used in combat by the U.S. Army. Yeah, the military, there's been rumors for a long time. I've talked about it plenty of times here on the channel about the military utilizing things like werewolves for combat. You know, there's a rumor that goes around about the military using werewolves in Vietnam to go into the tunnels and take out entire groups and hundreds of people underground behind enemy lines. Okay. And even to modern day, and not that the Vietnam wasn't modern day. Okay. It was before I was born though. Okay. But even, Jody Cook's been on my show with the North American Dogman Project and talked about, people seeing dogmen, like what German Shepherd humanoids, in, I believe what he said, it was like military uniforms and stuff. So I think that our government's been utilizing these things probably for a long time. Dennis, what do you think?
Absolutely. Jessica, you look at the werewolf, that would be the perfect catalyst for a super soldier type thing. You've got the perfect blend of animal and human thing going on there, and it's the perfect hybrid for that. When you think about it, you have this beast, this big monster type thing that is operating with the mind of a man. That's fascinating to think about. And not only that, but you got to also recognize the supernatural nature of the werewolf too. It's not just, I could see Dogman being more of the natural type thing. But the werewolf, that's where they differ. The werewolf is coming from a supernatural base. It has supposedly this very raw and very powerful demonic force that backs it up. That's why I said a lot of times, and I've said this before, I think I've said this on your show before, the werewolf is more like a psychotic killer. And once this thing gets on your trail, it gets your scent, it will not stop until it finds you and tears you into pieces and eats you. That's just the way the werewolf works. And you don't hear of Dogman doing that a lot, supposedly. But you definitely you have that going with the werewolf.
Yeah, it makes me think about some of these even the remote viewing targets that I've done. I was assigned a target that was the family who was attacked at the Land Between the Lakes in Kentucky. And that was back in the 1980s. And what I saw looked more like a kind of like a hyena type Dogman that was involved in that case. Okay. And of course it's all murky. There's no record of that happening except for eyewitness accounts and things like that. So that very well could have been werewolves that attacked them instead of dogmen, actually, because there's so much occult activity even going on. I've been told Land Between the Lakes has a lot of ritualistic occult activity there, and some of it might involve government officials and stuff. Okay, I don't know for sure. That's just a rumor, but so there's but something could have been conjured there. And instead of the dogmen, like everybody thinks it's dogmen that did that, it could have very well been werewolves, because we don't hear a whole lot about dogmen attacking people too much. I mean, we hear about it because it's so sensationalized, especially on YouTube, Dennis. Especially on YouTube, people get the views when you put a dogman attack on your title, but in reality, I don't think that's the case.
Well, I think and just not too long ago, my good friend Gerald Fountain and I did a show on conjured cryptids, and I think there is some conjuring going on, definitely connected to some of these dogman incidents. And if you bring something like that, Jessica, out of the darkness of the demonic, it would look like something very much like the hyena type looking thing. It would be more horrific looking. The deeper you get into the darkness of these things, the more monstrous they become. Especially if you conjure something up like that. I see it operating along the same level as a werewolf, definitely. Because of the dark demonic power that utilizes these things.
Yeah, well, let's dive in a little bit into the history of the occult connections to the German. I guess even Schmittler is what I usually say, but Hitler had a lot of occult ties, right, Dennis? And a lot of the scientists, they were doing some really strange experiments, really terrible experiments, actually, on human hybrids and reanimating corpses and stuff like that. The probability of them conjuring werewolves is pretty high, I would think. What do you think, Dennis?
Well, absolutely. That is one of the attributes of acquiring dark occultic power or satanic power, whatever name you want to tag it with. You have the ability to shapeshift. You acquire that as part of your initiation in certain levels. You got to be higher up in the levels of all this stuff to acquire that. And it would not surprise me if the SS was not very heavily involved in doing something like that, because they were obsessed with the occult. Matter of fact, the show I did with our good friend Shanty on the Vril Society, that's where all this began. And they were tapping supposedly into dark consciousness out there. And they were getting information to do things with. They certainly probably acquired the rituals needed to become a werewolf or to institute that in other people. That would not surprise me a bit. Matter of fact, this is something they would definitely be very, very interested in.
Absolutely. And Urso has a really interesting comment. He says Hitler had access to spots normal people had no access to, powerful places. And that's actually an interesting comment. It's a good point, because it's places of power where even on ley lines and historical places like sacred grounds and things like that, places that, like with vortexes and portals and stargates and all that, he had access to all of that and he knew where it was, I would assume. And
Matter of
making
fact,
it,
to this day, you can go to some of the compounds that they used. I think there's one castle, I can't think of the name of it, in Bavaria, somewhere in there, that was actually a stronghold for the SS during World War II. Hitler definitely, and Himmler as well, definitely frequented this castle. And down in the basement, Jessica, you can still see the remnants of a pentagram that was drawn on the floor with other signals that are attached to it. There was definitely demon raising type stuff going on. There was some definite conjuring connected to a lot of this stuff. No doubt about it. Because, like I said, Hitler was obsessed with the occult for one reason only. He wanted to acquire the dark power that it contained. He wanted that. He wanted power. He was always looking for power in any way he could find it, whatever the situation. That's why he went to these different places and got these different occult artifacts. He had astrologers working for him. The list goes on and on. He had tarot card readers. He had gypsies that came in to do this stuff. You could write just a book on what his obsession was with the occult.
oh my gosh. Well, you can tell that, you said, I don't know if you said sigils just then, but on his patches for the different units that he had, including this werewolf unit that they had, that's a real thing. This was an actual, in historical records, a group of guerrilla soldiers, basically at the very end of the war, was kind of banded together. I think it was a bunch of youngins, a bunch of young soldiers, women and men, got together and did a bunch of guerrilla warfare on the Allied troops, and took out a lot of people. They call themselves the werewolves, and on their crest, it's actually a sigil. Okay, and let's see. I think I have a picture of it here. We'll pull it up.
Yeah, they definitely used a lot of these signals in occult practices. They are the symbols of different demons and princes of hell. What you have there is what's called the wolf angle or wolf angel. It is supposedly from a trap used in the Middle Ages to trap wolves, and it is thought to like have this is what is the symbol of man's power over the wolf. In other words, containing the wolf and controlling the wolf. That and the wolf angel is a symbol of power and control.
That is really interesting. Yeah, it's some people thought this was like a rune. Okay, like a rune, and but I don't think it belonged to any kind of runic tradition. It's the wolf's angel was a device used to trap wolves. Like you were saying, many believed it to have magical powers to ward off werewolves. It can be aligned vertically or horizontally. Okay, so this is what it looks like in another direction here.
Definitely. And if you look at that, it sort of looks a lot alike because a broken swastika too.
It does.
Matter of fact, I have a medallion with that on there. It's a very prevalent, but it really, in modern eyes, looking at it through the filter of modern eyes, we see it as sort of a racial type symbol, racist thing or something. But back in the Middle Ages, it had a different perspective for it. It was a sign of power. That's basically what it was. And it was like wolfsbane. I know you've heard of wolfsbane, which is a very famous plant that grows over there. And it's a very deadly poison, by the way. And I would advise no one to ever grow any around your pets or anything because it is very, very bad poison. but that was also used to contain or control wolves. Think about the control over wolves was very, very powerful control. That was what they were seeking because this animal was sort of the predator of mankind to a certain extent in that way. So there was a lot of that definitely going on. But signals in the occult are very important. Like I say, they signify a lot of times the princes of hell, the different demons that are over different areas of what things that you want to conjure, whatever the situation. That's how
Hmm.
you call up demons by using their signals.
Oh yeah. Well, and sigils also represent magic, right?
Oh yeah, they are magic. They're runes. They come from runes, and runes are considered to be very magical signals that you use. Actually, they were the first alphabets, and you still find them in the Nordic alphabets and all that connected with the Vikings. But runes were used for magic purposes as well. Right now, to this very day, if you are given a curse, you're given a piece of paper with these runes written on it. And that's why I advise people not to take things from strangers. You are given a curse that are used by the runes. The runes are used constantly in magic, especially in dark occultic practices.
Oh yeah. I mean, some people will stitch sigils into their garments, into their clothes and stuff. I mean, it's a magical practice basically for protection and to ward off evil. And yeah, it's they can be used for good or bad. I assume everything can be used for good or bad. That's what it feels like. Um,
And you do have some products out there, Jessica, to this day that we buy every day that have runic type symbols and signals attached to them as trademarks.
oh yeah, of course. I mean, it's really easy to see. It's like the semiotics of things, right? Like Target, for instance. Okay, like that's or even emojis or sigils, right? Emoji. I've been hearing people on social media talking about how emojis that we put in our phone when we're communicating with people, smiley faces, crying faces, laughing faces, those are sigils of some sort. But even like the Target symbol for like the company is a sigil. I
You
mean,
got to remember, you got to remember this, Jessica. There is power in words. Words
mhm.
have power. And what are runes? They are written words.
Oh wow, that's right. That's right. And yeah, it's spells, okay? It's spells. Spells being cast. And
Mhm.
okay, well, talking about lightning bolts, I whenever I see the SS, like the German, I guess that's like another way for us to say the schmozzies. They have their SSs look like lightning bolts. And Maureen here is saying my dad had lightning bolt symbol on his army uniform, the 25th Infantry. Yes, they had lightning bolts as well. But not all lightning bolts are bad. Okay, but that is what that reminds me of there. Um, now following okay towards the end of World War II, Dennis, the Schmotzi, the SS guerrillas called the Werewolves, they were carrying out these guerrilla actions. They were actually an underground organization of die-hard SS officers who terrorized both military and civilian targets. They were founded by Heinrich Himmler in 1944. They helped to delay the first democratic election under occupation until 1947. Now, these people were going around wreaking havoc on the allied forces. Okay, and but they were just taking people out. Like they would go and pretend to want to surrender to people, and as soon as they get there to surrender, they'd end up taking everybody out. Okay,
Well,
they were guerrilla fighters at their finest.
there was one high ranking, I cannot remember his name. It was a high ranking SS officer. And they said that this guy would actually lose control of himself. He would become so enraged, he would become almost like a beast, an animal. He would start tearing the place up. I mean, he would go wild and go crazy like. Whether he was really a schizophrenic or was he a werewolf? They have to wonder about that sometimes because there were very many rumors that some of these people could do that they could transform into werewolves when they wanted to. And they say that some of these higher ranking officers were the ones that would be able to do that because they were closer to the hierarchy of the Fuhrer. And they were definitely deep into some of the occultic stuff that was going on as well.
Ooh, wow. Okay, well, and that's kind of where things get kind of skewed too, right? Because, or there's a gray area. Let's just say there's a gray area, because when you hear about the werewolf unit called the Werewolves, some people will interpret that as like they were literal werewolves. All of them were werewolves. Okay, but I don't know. I think that there are cases that we're going to talk about now. This was one that was out there that people knew about. Those were actual humans, but there could potentially have been some sort of werewolves involved in this, like actual werewolves. Or who's to say all those people that are in that unit weren't like berserkers? Okay, and there's a fine line with these berserkers too. We talked about the Viking berserkers. Also could have been werewolves. Okay, and they put on the pelt of the animal, and they would go and they would lose their minds basically.
That was the battle. The Uthendar were the ones who wore the wolves, and the berserkers were the ones who wore bear skins. The Uthendar, they were supposedly would scare the berserkers. By the way, they were so much worse than they were. But all of this comes down to the use of drugs. Okay, that exhibited some of this stuff. And we got to remember something. Towards the end of the war, most all of the German soldiers were on drugs, by the way. I don't know, a lot of people don't realize this, but they were giving them amphetamines by the truckload. And unfortunately, so were our soldiers, trying to keep awake on the battlefield, trying to keep alive, kind of, keep active. They were taking quaaludes and amphetamines too. So you got a lot of drug use. And whenever you have drug use like that, it lowers the inhibitions that you have. It's very much like we've talked about this before, that adrenaline rush you get. I think you said you experienced that one time in your life, where you that adrenaline rush gives you power that you didn't have before. You pick up a car off of somebody or whatever situation. Drugs turn that loose. They take the boundaries off of that. And when you do that, man becomes closer to being an animal than a man.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Your animalistic instincts kick in, and you just, I picked up a 4-wheeler off of my cousin after we'd had a really bad accident on it. And she was able to crawl out from underneath it she had a broken leg, and I had a cracked sternum. I mean, it was wild. We had a really bad wreck, but I couldn't have lifted that thing up without a broken sternum. And I'm wondering if that's what broke my sternum actually, but it was just really wild how your animalistic, nature does kick in moments like that. Now I was not on drugs. Okay. So it was that adrenaline. Adrenaline's like a drug, isn't it, Dennis?
Well, we got to remember this, Jessica. Inside of all of us, there exists an animal. We keep it civilized, okay? We keep it down. We keep it under control. Civilized control over the animal in us. But what happens when we turn that animal loose? What happens when there are no more inhibitions for it? That it can be a very dangerous ground. And definitely, I guarantee you without a doubt, the SS was very interested in this kind of thing. They were even trying to, and when you get into the super soldier program thing, which I think had a lot to do with this, they were experimenting not just with wolves and stuff like that, but also with baboons and apes. The list goes on and on. They were deep into this stuff. They were looking for that perfect combination of animal and man. That they could utilize on the battlefield against the enemy, and they didn't care how they went about it.
Well, I know from talking with my good buddy, his name's Jimmy Payne. Okay, and he was a super soldier, MIB, And he often goes on my friend James Rink's channel. It's called Super Soldier Talk, and I've done several shows with both of them. And they've been over here on my channel. We actually talked about vampires here. We did a 2-part series on vampires and the German experiments and stuff that were going on with reanimated corpses. Okay, so I know just from talking to Jimmy, the type of experimentation that was going on back then during this time, where they were just trying to perfect a super soldier, and would pretty much do anything. Nothing was off limits with them. And I mean, and you know, I've covered that. What was it called? The Billy Whack monster. Okay, that goat man that's out of Southern California. I mean, that person was, I don't think he was German, that scientist. I think he was Swedish. But he came over from Europe and was doing experiments on animal-human hybrids underneath that dairy back in 1920. Okay, so I know this has been going on for a long time, way longer than we would know. And he had military ties. He was actually in whatever organization before this was the CIA here in the United States.
If you look back through history, Jessica, this has been something that's been on the tab for mankind for a long time. Look at the Island of Dr. Moreau that was written back in the 1890s, 1880s. The list goes on, and it's been something that's been talked about down through the history of mankind. Look at the hybrid of the Egyptian gods. Look at the Minotaur. The list goes on and on and on. Pan. We look at these things as being hybrids of human, half animal, half human thing. And I think a lot of this supposedly goes back, and we won't talk about that today. It goes back straight to the Nephilim thing, okay? Because they weren't just fooling around with human women; they were fooling around with animals as well to produce weird stuff. Anyway, we won't get into that. But anyway, the whole thing is this has been something prevalent throughout our entire history. No wonder that the SS was involved in this. They were looking for the perfect soldier. This was one avenue that they would definitely explore. I don't see them passing that up. Definitely not. And I think the super soldier thing is still ongoing. I don't think they've ever turned that loose. I think they brought it from Germany over here and are still developing it. And there are talks of these things being seen in containment areas. I think there was one guy that said he walked down to a containment area of these things in an underground military base. And guess what it was filled with? Werewolves.
Oh, I'm not shocked.
Werewolves. Okay. That's an interesting connection. Oh, one more thing though, we've got to understand, and I won't say this before we go on, and we're talking about this later on. There is a very distinct connection, my friends, between vampires and werewolves, because they are connected demonically. Okay, you got to remember that. That's why they're connected together.
Oh, well, we are talking sigils, we are talking rituals and the occult, and the Germans were highly involved in all of that. And maybe I'm not saying they are, but what if this group of werewolf guerrilla soldiers had occult knowledge, and what if they did go and turn, like they were just like the heads of the higher level ups of the people in the Brotherhood of the Church of Satan, right? they have an option of turning into either a vampire or a werewolf, and doing pretty terrible things, very, very much similar to like what people who want to become skinwalkers do. Sacrifices, blood magic, all that kind of stuff. I mean, they are out there unaliving people, so there's a lot of blood out there. They're sacrificing people, right? It'd be a perfect storm for them to be able to go into some sort of a ritualistic chant. I don't know how they do it, but to turn with all that blood all around them and all the lives they're taking.
Well, there's a lot of definite blood magic connected to that. Blood magic is a different thing. We didn't do a show one day on just the different types of magic that are in this world and prevalent in mankind. But this is definitely blood magic, which some of this is the darkest magic of all. And we got to understand too. Look at the Hounds of God. Supposedly, that's a secret sect of priests in the Catholic Church that can turn into werewolves and do things for the church. Okay, put it that way. Some of the Knights Templar, and I'm a Knights Templar, by the way, supposedly were werewolves. The list goes on and on. There's a different, and here's the thing about it. Where was the heart of the werewolf legend in Europe born, Jessica?
Germany.
In Germany, yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, they had that's the place where they had the werewolf witch trials, right?
Mm-hmm.
The werewolf witch trials, 1500s.
That's very provided. Well, see, there's a big tie in with werewolves and witchcraft. They go together. You can't have one without the other.
Well, it's all connected, and they're all probably dealing with demons and stuff. So, okay, well, let me back up a little bit. Let's go back to the werewolf unit, okay? Because they did start announcing it, like the German radio station. I don't know how many stations they had. They probably had plenty. I don't know, but on German radio, they would actually at nighttime and throughout the day, they would do like almost like a commercial. It was almost kind of propaganda, I guess, a little bit too. It's called the Minister of Propaganda, actually. Oh my goodness. Of course it would be called that. Joseph Goebbels, I guess is how you pronounce his last name. Around 1945, he started broadcasting and urging German civilians to join the werewolf movement, fighting the Allies and any German collaborators who welcomed the enemy into their homes. One female broadcaster proclaimed, "I am so savage. I am filled with rage. Lily the werewolf is my name. I bite, I eat, I am not tame. My werewolf teeth bite the enemy." And then she signed off, I guess. So that it was full out propaganda, okay, I guess, and it's real that is propaganda.
There were some propaganda posters even published showing some German soldiers as werewolves, and there towards the end they were defending their ground whichever way possible, and they would come out at night, only at night, and strike, and they would definitely call themselves werewolves because they killed in horrific ways. And here's one more thing. They could not use guns that much, okay, because that would give your position away. So what if you could attack your enemy with knives or whatever, or as a werewolf, do what needed to be done? You would tear them into pieces, eat a little bit of them, whatever the situation. By the way, they were starving too, to a certain extent. So you got to remember, this is a perfect breeding ground for something like the werewolf. Definitely would want. The thing about werewolf kills, and you got to remember this. I've had people ask me if I brought you into a certain room and somebody had been killed or something in this room, could you tell me whether it was like a Dogman or a true werewolf that did this? Well, if they have been horrifically mauled to the point you can't tell they were human beings anymore, and they were partially eaten, that would be a werewolf strike. That would be the way a werewolf would do it. And these people were doing that to enemy combatants out there in the field. And then one more thing we got to remember, even in Vietnam, when some of our soldiers were killed, they were found with their middles cut open and their livers missing, because the enemy would eat their livers out in the field.
Oh, with a nice Chianti and some fava beans. I'm just kidding. Terrible joke there. That actually reminds me of what I was wanting to talk about today a little bit, and that's the Winter War of 1939, because the Russian soldiers in this case were found just like you just described, slaughtered all over the place with their bodies flung up in trees, their organs hanging out. They had been gutted, decapitated. Some of them were actually, their bodies were frozen. It was like -20 to -40 degrees out there. And the Russians were not as used to the weather as the Finnish people were. Okay, that was their territory. They knew how to handle the cold a little bit better than, not that Russians can't handle the cold. They can handle it way better than us Americans, probably. At least us Southerners.
Here's the interesting thing about that, Jessica. I've read, I poured over a lot of the reports and everything. Yes, you're correct. They even their bodies were frozen to the ground, and the blood was congealed around them by the
Yeah.
temperature. Here's the interesting fact. Okay, I want you to think about this. Somebody comes up and says, "Oh, it was bears and wolves that did this." Okay, but there was a lot of ammunition spent on the ground, a lot of shell casings, but no dead bodies of wolves or bears.
And no dead bodies of Finnish soldiers either. Okay, this is so it wasn't a firefight with the two opposing armies.
Mm-hmm.
And there were howls heard, howls and groans. Now I want to set the stage for all this, okay? Because I know the audience probably I was not even aware of this until last night.
Well, this
Okay.
incident, by the way, this incident was the inspiration for that very famous movie, Dog Soldiers. Have you ever seen that movie, by the
Oh
way?
yeah.
You know what I'm talking? This was
Wow.
the
Yeah.
inspiration for that movie. I find that very interesting too. But yeah, where are the dead animals? Where are the dead Finnish soldiers at? Nothing. And what killed these people then? What was it? Was it something supernatural?
Oh my gosh. Yes. Okay. Well, let's get a rundown of what this is and what happened. And as a matter of fact, I think I might share my screen, and we'll just go. I pulled up some pictures on Google. Okay, I actually Googled today, and give me 1 second here. We'll get this up. Okay. All right. Can y'all see that? Dennis, can you see the screen? I'm assuming y'all can. All right. So these are the pictures of this is from the Winter War of 1939, the Soviet invasion of Finland. Okay. And
Now, all this was right before World War II, actually.
mhm.
At the very beginning of World War II is when all this happened. But to this day, there's still a large part of Finnish land that belongs to the Russians. They still hold it to this day.
Oh gosh. Okay. Well, it began with the Soviet invasion of Finland on November 30th, 1939, 3 months before World War II broke out. And it ended only 3 months later. I think it was 3.5 months later with the Moscow Peace Treaty on March 13th, 1940. Now, this is interesting because the Finnish soldiers just didn't have as much firepower as the Russians. It looked like they were going to be taken over, but nonetheless, the Finnish soldiers, when Russia came in and tried to invade, the Finnish soldiers, they kind of had the upper hand a little bit, even though they didn't have the firepower. They knew the
Well,
terrain. They had home field advantage, Dennis, right?
planning, Jessica, on taking all of Finland, very much like they're doing the Ukraine right now. Okay, it's the same operational type thing. They were going to put a puppet in place to rule Finland and all this stuff, but they finally did this treaty because they were given so much land. And that's what they were trying to do, take land, just like they're doing in the Ukraine right now. They were trying to take land, and they did get what they wanted. They got the land they wanted, and that's why they did the peace treaty with them. But they could have went on the roller coaster and took Finland easily, and that was part of the plan. But I think there was some other stuff going on in the background that sort of like, maybe the U.S. said something about it or somebody else said something. They were going to back up the Finns in this. So I think Russia said, well, we've got the land we want. We'll just go ahead and sign a treaty kind of thing. But that's what it was all about.
Oh, okay. Very cool. Thank you for that background there. Okay. So when the Russians came in to this area where this battle, I want to say a battle took place, but it wasn't really a battle with the two opposing forces. There was an attack. Okay. So the Russians planned an attack on I think it's called the Kameni Mountains. Kameni, maybe is how you pronounce that. And the Finnish people, the locals there, they tried to warn the Russians, like, don't go to that mountain because there are demons. There's something demonic up there. And the Russians thought they were pulling their leg. They were like, whatever. These people are crazy, right? And but they warned the Soviets not to go there because of the demons like the Otsu or the Bear Man and the Varentusi I believe it's how you pronounce that, which is a type of werewolf that they both roamed that area at that mountain. Now, these are local legends, but the people who lived there never went there up on that mountain. They would not go up there. And but they watched as the Soviets went up the mountain, and they didn't stop them. Okay, because that was the enemy. They were going to let the local legends, the local werewolf and the bear man, take care of them, I guess. And I don't think it disappointed, because I think they got taken care of, because they all got taken out, every one of them. So the Finns did not occupy this mountain. I'm reading my notes here so I don't get it wrong. But around the second week of January, the Finns were about 1 mile from the mountain. They were monitoring the Soviets from down below. If you guys were able to see those pictures I just pulled up, they had their binoculars and they were just sitting back watching. They were just watching, coming up with a game plan, actually, to go and take their mountain back, I guess. But they were just kind of watching. Some of the Finnish soldiers, they teamed up in pairs or groups of 4 soldiers, and they went and they staked out around the mountain. And they said that they began hearing bear howls and wolf howls. Okay. And they were hearing this at night mostly. They would hear like just crazy screams and howls at night. And then one night, they were all staked out around this mountain, just watching and observing. And they heard terrible howls. And then they heard a return machine gun fire. Okay. They were hearing shooting, grenades going off. And the Finnish people, all the soldiers were like divided into groups of 4. So they didn't know if like maybe one of those groups of 4 had gone up there and engaged in war with them, engaged in a battle. So nobody knew what was going on. They could just hear the howls, the screams, the machine gun fire. And that's all they heard. And this went on for 2 days, 2 days, 2 nights. I don't know. It went on, and it was just more howling, more fighting, more shooting guns. And it finally kind of died out. And like one of the other groups of 4 members went up there to go check it out. They were going to go fight. And they got up there, and it was wild, because all of the Russian soldiers that had been up there were completely quiet. When they got able to go see where they were, their bodies were completely slaughtered. I'm talking about ravished. Something had shredded their bodies, thrown them up in trees. Their heads were cut off. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Dennis.
Absolutely. And you know what's so interesting, Jessica, is that they let those soldiers go up that mountain, kind of like saying, "Oh well, the werewolves take care of them. We're not worried about it." And that's what happened, supposedly. But that's typical werewolf kind of a thing to do. You don't just maul them. You horrifically tear something to pieces. Yeah. And that was supposedly what they found, these soldiers in the condition that they were in. That they were completely almost obliterated by these things. And like they said, their blood was congealed on the ground, frozen. They were frozen to the ground. Pieces of them laying around. That sounds like a typical werewolf kind of a party to me.
It does. It does. That's what's making me kind of question the whole LBL attack of that family, too, because they were completely shredded and ripped, and arms pulled off, and body parts. It just doesn't sound as typical of like a Dogman doing that as it would be a werewolf doing that, Dennis. And so
I've said that for a long time. That sounds more like a werewolf thing to me than the Dogman. Dogman does not usually do. Now they have attacked people and they will tear you up, but not like that. Like I said, the werewolf's a psychotic killer. It doesn't know its own strength. And it doesn't stop. It just goes wild. It goes berserk. That's like they give them the name, the berserkers. It goes berserk. It goes completely off kilter, and does these things. And then it will eat you too. It eats a little bit. It always has to eat a little bit of the flesh that it tears up, and that's just the way werewolves work. But now the vampire works in a somewhat different fashion. He more or less tears the throat out. If he does a very, rampage type vampire rampage, they go for the throat. They tear it out. More so, the werewolf tears you up completely. That's the way he works.
Oh man, I'd rather be torn up completely than halfway torn up and have to survive that. That would suck. That sounds so morbid. It does. But what I find interesting too is that the locals knew of the I want to say a werebear, not a Care Bear, not to be confused with Care Bears. Oh, werebear, not a were, but where. I know, almost like a werewolf, but a bear, like an attack bear up there that could have gotten them too. I mean, it could have been a tag team effort. The werebear.
Shapeshifting goes over into the bear territory, definitely.
Does it?
Stories of people, of werebears, we would call them, and even werefoxes to a certain extent. And foxes are pretty good size in some areas. And so you had the werefox.
The werefox.
Anyway, so it's not just the wolf.
Oh my gosh. Well, that's good to know. Okay, because I had a remote viewing target, and it was unfortunately it was actually people who died under kind of mysterious circumstances up in East Tennessee. The two people who both died from packs of wild dogs is what the official narrative was about that. But what I was seeing when I was remote viewing was what I called a zombie bear. It was like a zombie bear. It looked like a bear, but it wasn't a bear. And the only way I could describe it was zombie bear. And so, wow, that would act. And I believe there could be ties to some sort of government program.
Yeah,
super soldier program with that.
One very important factor, Jessica. When you're dealing with shapeshifters, you got to remember this is demonic, okay? And whenever the demonic is involved in changing into some form, it is a horrific looking thing. This is monstrous looking thing. It's not going to look just like a wolf. It's not going to look just like a bear. It's going to come out looking terrible. It's going to be mutilated looking thing. It's going to be awful. And that's just the way the demonic power goes with that. And so what you're dealing with here, my friends, are monsters. Okay, they are real monsters.
Yep.
They're not just something out of nature. If you run into a werewolf, it doesn't look like a regular wolf, folks. This is a monstrous thing. It's a horrible looking thing. It can stand on two legs and it can run on all fours if it wants to. But it is very versatile in the way it works. Same thing would be with the werebear. If you're doing a bear, or if you're doing a big cat, or like the Appalachian witches supposedly can turn into big cats, and I'm talking like leopards and jaguars, and they supposedly can do that. So, but it's not going to look like your regular kind of a thing. It's like I said before, if a demon were to appear as me in front of you, Jessica, you would notice something really off. Okay, you would say, there would be something not quite right about the way I look. It never is that way. It never is perfect with a demonic. They always screw it up somehow or another. It's maniacally done in that fashion, and that definitely goes with people who change into these things because they're using demonic power.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and yes, Alea is asking, isn't that what you RV'd with the unspecified animal attack? Yes, I did. I've actually remote viewed. I've done a couple of shows on unspecified animal attacks where I've remote viewed them, and this one, that case that I was referring to is actually Tony Aarons and Amber Miller up in East Tennessee in Cott County. And so if you guys want to go back and watch that, it's in my remote viewing playlist, unspecified animal attacks. And it was, I believe I've covered them, and I might have covered another hunter in that show as well. Maybe out of Texas. I can't remember, but nonetheless, yes, that's it. It's a unspecified animal attacks. It's about time for me to remote view some more unspecified animal attacks, or at least to tell you guys about the ones I've already done. Because I think it's important that we get to the bottom of those things.
Let me say this about animal attacks, okay? I was surrounded once by a pack of wild dogs, okay? I've run into bears. I have seen cougars. Most of the time, you can scare these things off, and they will leave you alone. Luckily, I was able to do that with this wild dog pack. And they get very mean, very vicious when they pack up like that. Okay. But anyway, you can most of the time get out of a situation, like I said, most of the time. So there's, you may find that bear you may run into one day may be having a bad bear day. Okay. You might run into that. That's always a possibility. But sometimes, most of the time, these animals want to avoid you. They want to avoid trouble, just like we do. That's just the way animals work. But sometimes something like a demonic werewolf or bear, whatever the situation is not going to turn you loose. It's not going to give you a pass. It's going to come after you. And that's just the way it operates, because this power, this force that it's using, is something that goes far beyond the natural. We must understand that. And that's why it's called the supernatural. It doesn't act like it doesn't condone the laws of nature and the universe. It's going to go past that, above it, supernatural.
Wow, yes. We have some great comments in here today, too. Thank you, Leah, too. She says, zombie bear Nephilim, seen one that was a zombie T-Rex, hangs out on 35 between St. Paul and Duluth. Oh, my gosh. That's wild. We do get reports of modern-day dinosaurs all over the U.S., too, by the way. And especially down in Texas, man. They got baby T-Rexes down there.
No,
and, pterodactyls.
Safe to say, using demonic power, you could also shapeshift into something like reptilian things, like dinosaurs and stuff like that. Yeah, that's a possibility. Absolutely. Because the demonic are reptilians, by the way. That's what they are. And definitely they would
really
go into that kind of a shape or form if they wanted to as well.
Oh my gosh, that's wild. Okay, well, super interesting. And also, I wanted to go back and just let the audience know that around 16,000 or more soldiers died at the Winter War of 1939. I mean, that sounds like an excessive amount of soldiers, though. I can't imagine there being that many. Maybe they just meant in the whole skirmish. Okay, because that's a lot of people. I mean, of course, 32 or 34,000 soldiers died just at Chickamauga in Georgia during the battle there in North Georgia during the Civil War. So, I mean, it's totally possible, okay, that 16,000 soldiers died here. And maybe that is. It just, in my mind, I think I was thinking it was like, it couldn't have been that many people. But they had, at least there was thousands of people died during this war that they had there. So, really interesting stuff, though. Dennis, what does your gut say? Do you think that it was werewolves that tore those people apart, those soldiers?
That would be my first suspicion on that, because of the way the condition of the bodies. There were no dead animals, dead Finnish soldiers, or anybody else dead except for the Russian soldiers that were found there. That's a telltale sign to me that what they were fighting was something that wasn't natural. And I mean, you had so many clues that fall in the line that maybe this is what happened there. Definitely.
Yeah. Okay. Well, there's another instance during the World War II in a place called the Black Forest. Now, Dennis, you've got the information on that. I cannot wait to hear it. What happened at the Black Forest?
Well, actually, the whole thing, the Black Forest is deep in Germany, but it also runs counterclockwise to parts of Romania. And back then it did. It doesn't anymore. But back then it did. It had parts of Romania, which are the Carpathian Mountains. I guess everybody knows what famous place that is. That's Transylvania, the land of Dracula. So the Black Forest was very large, okay, at it for a time period. So it is said that Himmler decided to make it a game preserve. He was very big at hunting and all that, and Himmler decided to make a big part of the Black Forest a natural preserve for game to go hunting. He and Hitler could go hunting there, and Goebbels and some of the others. Top German brass could go hunting there, sort of like a retreat and a lodge thing. But there was one problem. There were a lot of people living there. So they had to get rid of those people. And being the SS, being the way they did it, was not very nice. They would usually come in, take your house, kill you, and that would be the end of the farm, and that was it, part of the natural preserve. So this went on for days and nights. Supposedly but the people warned them: if you go to certain areas of the Black Forest, you will run into werewolves and vampires, and you will not be able to deal with this. Well, they laughed at that. That's just stories to scare little kids at night. But supposedly there was one battalion, a detachment of SS. I think it was like around the property of about 200 men that were assigned to get rid of these people. And
Oh God.
yeah, and they would go in and take their land and all that stuff. And
Terrible.
that night during the camp out that they had, I think right in the middle of the Black Forest, they were attacked by something in the dark. And it wasn't the peasants revolting. It was something else. Supposedly it was vampires and werewolves that attacked this detachment. They found them in the morning, all of them torn to pieces, some of them with their throats torn out. There were 2 or 3 that were left, and they were just like almost insane, babbling about vampires and werewolves that had attacked them. And here again, you have another sign, the same thing like with the Winter War. When the brass came in to see this, the top, I think Himmler was with them. They saw what happened with this detachment. They said, hey, maybe it's not a good idea to make this a game preserve anymore. Let's just cover this whole thing up. And the Germans had very meticulous records, and they supposedly expunged a lot of this from their records so that they would never find out what happened. He didn't want Hitler to know what had happened to his elite corps of men that he had with him. So, I mean, these were top. These weren't just regular soldiers. These guys were highly trained that were disseminated by this. And so I think 1 or 2 that were left were put in tank battalions and sent to the front. That was the way to get rid of somebody, too, to get rid of a soldier especially. But anyway, make a long story short, they withdrew from out of the Black Forest and would not return because of what happened to this detachment of soldiers. And the people had warned them, you're not going up against people in the Black Forest. You're going up against something much older than that, than mankind. And you better stay out of there. And but they wouldn't listen, but they found out the hard way that the old wives' tales were maybe true.
Oh my God. We have places like that in the United States. They're called national forest.
Yep.
Oh man. I mean, we do have a lot of people going missing, Dennis, out of those parks. Now that is pretty terrifying, and it sounds pretty scary. I don't know. It's almost like that mountain that the Finnish people said, go ahead, Russians, y'all go up there. You're our enemy, so let the werewolves take care of y'all out there.
Well,
Scary.
the interesting thing I find about all that, Jessica, is that they ran up against something that was supernatural, something beyond their power, something beyond the normal thing that you would run into in war. They learned the lesson the hard way, I think. And but there are others, and we've talked about this before. There are other stories that even on our side, people have taught related things that happened during World War II that were very supernatural. There were a lot of things like that happened. Not only ghosts, but supposed sightings of things like Bigfoot and Dogman, things that attacked some of our soldiers, threw rocks at them and all that. And of course, a lot of this also went over into the Korea War, and also in Vietnam, you had stories like this. Here's the thing about war, and like we've talked about with would you talk about Chickamauga, and of course, old green eyes that you're supposedly seen there. the interesting thing about war, we got to remember this: it brings out the worst in people. You know, it is a time when the mankind is showing his worst face on this planet. That would definitely, absolutely attract a lot of the bad, negative energy out there, okay, in whatever form it may take. That would attract them and bring them, wherever there's trauma, pain, and death, you're going to find these things walking around on the perimeter, whether they be werewolves, vampires, demons, whatever the situation. You're definitely going to have stuff like that in warfare, in wartime.
Well, the land requires blood, Dennis. And that's something that comes up quite often when I'm remote viewing places that are creepy and have sightings like werewolves and stuff. A lot of times it's because there's all sorts of bloodshed there. They're seen on these battlefields and where people are doing rituals, and places like the LBL, for instance, where there's a lot of cemeteries and a lot of death and just rituals, I guess. That's where it's blood. It's all about the blood. Firewater by design. Thank you so much for that super sticker. She says the Cryptid Huntress has the best show and chat on YouTube. Thank you so much. Hit that button. Yes, and it's always better when Dennis is here too. Thank you so much. Dennis has got a fantastic channel too, y'all. Okay, so it's amazing. Thank y'all so much for that. And everybody, a lot of people are talking about the Black Forest ham and stuff too in the chat. Dennis, the Black Forest ham, that is my favorite ham, you guys. So you're not wrong. Sue, hey Sue. Sue says, I remember hearing about that connection of Black Forest Hammer, the pigs, and the hunting parties. I hope there is not a connection there. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. And by hunting parties, you probably mean human hunting parties, is what I'm assuming. And that's kind of, should I say, satanic?
That was one thing they enjoyed doing. Definitely, it was one of their pastimes. And also, I think some of these people were very caught up on torture in different ways and all that. And definitely, I could see them doing the black magic stuff to accomplish a lot of things what they want to do. Here's the thing about that, you talk about the land requiring blood. There are blood magic rituals that have to be done in certain aspects of the occult. They bring forth dark forces. Bring things out of the darkness. You conjure things up with this blood magic. Is very strong stuff. And like you say, whenever there's a lot of blood flowing, whether it may be war, whatever the situation, these things are going to definitely be there. It's going to be a factor that you need to face. That blood magic is very interesting. Even the Aztecs knew about that. The Egyptians definitely did. Every aspect of culture of mankind has been involved in blood magic of some sort. That even includes Native Americans, the whole works. I mean, blood magic is something that is very strong in this world. It is a magic that brings forth a very unique darkness of its own.
Oh, yes, it doesn't discriminate. It's all over the world. There's been rituals done. I mean, some cultures would take the beating hearts out of people's chests and sacrifice a lot of, virgins, I guess, and things like that. So,
we have to consider abortions as well in that factor. Oh. It's almost another form of blood magic, you might say. And a lot of this child sacrifices and all this that goes on. There's definitely a lot of missing people involved in this kind of stuff. And also, here's one other horrific part of blood magic: torture. Okay, torture brings out pain and also the greatest fear of all. Okay, these negative forces are feeding off of this fear and pain, this trauma. It's food for them. It's not just they're getting the fun out of it or they're enjoying it, and I'm sure they do, knowing their twisted minds, they definitely enjoy it, but they're getting power from it, and there is, when one human being tortures another human being, it is not about the fun part of it. It may be fun for some people, It's not about that. It's about the power that they're gaining over there. They're getting out of this. Watching this. Let me tell you a quick blood ritual that is horrific to think about. It's called
Okay.
the Talmange. And the Talmange is where you capture all the cats in the neighborhood. And you take a cat
Oh,
and you roast it alive over a fire.
ew.
You roast this cat, and while it is screaming and crying, you do this on and on and on and on, cat after cat after cat after cat, just immediately with it. As soon as it dies, you put another one on there and on. And what you're doing is you are forming a barrier of darkness with this torture that will get the, shall we say, it will get the attention of other things out there that you want, because it is attracted to this torture and death and dying part of these poor animals being done this way. Or sometimes this is people, folks, and not animals that they use to do this. Anyway, during this horrific type torture, this brings forth the forces of darkness in greater measure. This is one way to get their attention. This is one way you call them up with extreme pain and torture, whatever it may be. Whenever you do that, you are dealing with the darkest dark magic of all.
Mm. That is horrible. It just makes me sick thinking about that. I don't even like putting those thoughts in my mind of hurting animals like that. That's just, there's a special place in hell for people that do stuff like that. I'm just saying. That's really sad. And it never, it's almost not even shocking. It is shocking, actually, how demented people can be to not have any kind of a soul. It almost makes me feel like people who do things like that are not actually human. Because most humans, we have empathy. But some people are born without the empathy gene, or either they just lose it at some point, I guess, Dennis. Or maybe, like I said, they're not human, right?
Well, definitely, especially if you're dealing with something out of the supernatural. It's not going to have any empathy. It's not going to feel for you. It's not going to, you're just something else for it to destroy. That's all it matters. Very much like a shark. When you swim with the sharks, what do you expect to happen? Bad things are going to happen eventually. That's just the way it goes. But when you deal with something of the supernatural, it has no feeling for you. It has no empathy for you. It is a force that has no reckoning power on stuff like that. It's just going to roll over you like a steamroller. That's the way it goes. And you got to understand, if you come up against something like that, you might have. I'm going to say this: I would rather face a bear or a mountain lion than to face a werewolf. Okay, why? Because not just because it's a monstrous thing, but because you got a lot better chance with the bear or the mountain lion than you do the werewolf. Okay, that's just the way that goes. Same thing with vampires. What you're dealing with is a demonic force that has never been human. It has no human qualities to it, and it can't ever have any of those human qualities. It is something far beyond what you will ever face. These are things you don't want to play around with. I've had a lot of people come to me over the years with problems with this stuff because they dabbled around in it. They played around with it. You don't ever want them. You don't ever, trust me, you don't ever want to touch bases with this stuff, because when you do, it's all about destruction and death. That's it. And it's not, you don't have a chance when you play with these things. Eventually, sooner or later, it will suck you in so deep that you are gone. And that's it. That's the way it works.
Mm-hmm.
We got to understand that word supernatural. A lot of people, Jessica, get that mixed up with the paranormal. Those are two different terms here you're dealing with. Paranormal means slightly above normal, out of the normal. Supernatural is way above the natural. It is far beyond that. And you're dealing with things far beyond what you're used to dealing with. Things that are completely alien to you. No doubt about it.
Mm. Yes. Man, I am just fishing through the comments over here and talking about sharks and stuff. It is pretty horrific, y'all. And I'm sorry. I know this is kind of heavy heavy subject right now, talking about that and with the black magic, you know, and yeah, I mean, I have a good friend of mine whose family, okay, he grew up in a family that practiced black magic. I have a couple friends actually that have been on my show. Even you know William Nighthawk. I don't know if he's in the chat today. You know he's come on the show talking about his mother practiced black magic. My friend Tony has been on the show, Tony Green, and he talked about how his uncle ran out of the house and disappeared behind a tree. He was running from the cops. The cops came to the house, and he ran out his back door, and he went behind the tree. And what came out the other side of the tree was a dog, and it ran off into the woods. And it trotted back out of the woods when the cops left. And as it went behind that tree, his uncle came out the other side. Okay, and he's actually told me a story about cats as well, and something that happened, and it's very similar to that, and it just breaks my heart. And I hate hearing it, but this stuff does happen, y'all. Dennis, did you happen? I know this is off subject. Did you happen to see that video clip of a woman at the Super Bowl with a voodoo doll, and she was hitting it was like a effigy of like the quarterback or something? I don't even know. I haven't watched any football in years. By the way, it's all rigged. Okay, but she was sitting there in the stands, and she had a needle in her hand, and she was just poking it while the guy was out on the field playing. She was poking it with a needle, and I thought about you when I saw that.
That doesn't surprise me a bit. Matter of fact, during the last election, I think there was a whole coven of witches that were casting spells against Donald Trump. By the way, they will do this. Here's the thing about magic, Jessica, that makes it so dangerous and so dark. Okay, magic is nothing but changing the reality of things around us. Okay, I think my own personal belief is our Creator has created all of this for a reason and a purpose for it to be the way it is. Okay, and whenever you start trying to change that creation, that's not good. You're stepping outside the will of the Creator. You're stepping outside of the grace of God. In other words, whenever you start messing around with the reality that He has said, bad things are going to happen. Okay, you're really breaking, I think, one of the main basic laws of spiritual factors. Okay, whenever you do this, and it's not good because it will not only badly affect other people, it badly affects you spiritually as well when you do these things. And I have confronted over the years many times, I have confronted supernatural creatures. I have confronted people of the supernatural. I have confronted supernatural situations, shall we say, that have led me to believe that this is one thing you don't want to do, is cross that line. Because once you cross over that line into the darkness, you may never come back again.
Yeah, you lose yourself, right? You lose your soul.
And if you do, and if you like some people that live around these things, some people that are brought up around black magic and other practice of it, it changes you for the bad. I mean, it puts a shadow on your soul that never goes away.
Yeah. That Han says that lady was tripping. She was jittery and was seriously just stabbing that little voodoo doll. And you know what? And it was wild because I was looking at some of the comments, by the way, on social media, and people were. It was almost kind of surprising because I don't know what color eyes she had, but she was Caucasian with blonde hair, probably blue eyes. I'm just going to assume. But everybody practices voodoo. Apparently, is all I'm saying.
I thought about that, Jessica. It ain't gonna work if she didn't have at least like some hair clippings or clothing from that person.
She probably didn't.
I don't know if she was doing it
from a Super Bowl star. I doubt it. But you never know. I mean, she may know his barber. You know what I mean? Like, you got to be careful who you let cut your hair. And when they
used to believe, Jessica, that once you clipped your hair, you burn it. It was not a good thing to ever have it to fall either in the hands of birds. If birds got your hair and put it in the nest, you would supposedly go insane. But it was also another fact is you would definitely not want a witch to get any of your hair, because then they could get you in some very bad trouble. So they would burn their hair, because that, and fingernail clippings as well. You did not want anything like that to get in the hands of the wrong person.
No, you don't. Oh my gosh. You definitely don't. I mean, I knew a lady. Okay, I'm not calling people out. Okay, but I don't. This woman, I don't talk to her anymore. But she was a hairdresser, and she, just think about that. She had access to everybody's hair, and she cut their hair, and she told me, she bragged about how she would put people in jars and freeze them and do all sorts of weird stuff. And I mean,
Mhm.
I'm sorry. It's not my thing. I don't do that. I don't know how. I mean, I know how it works, but I don't do that. And I wouldn't do that to anybody. But she did it. She thought it was funny. And I was thinking, man, if she's doing that to people that think are her friends, imagine what she's doing to people that, get on her nerves at the beauty salon and do it. Okay. And yeah. And by the way, I got some very close friends that are hairdressers, and it's not them. Okay. If anybody's wondering, it's watching. It's not my good friends. Y'all know who they are. Okay. It's somebody who I was an acquaintance of. Okay. But just imagine, it's a little scary, because she knew how to do the voodoo stuff. So yeah. Be careful who cuts your hair, y'all.
All you would need, if I couldn't get your hair, I would definitely get a piece of your clothing. That's just about as good, because something that has touched your body still supposedly has your essence on it. So if you can't get the hair, the clothing is the other thing you got to worry about.
Yeah.
I think, there's a very famous scene in Rosemary's Baby, and where this guy, that comes to see her, he is a scholar. He knows a lot about the occult, and he is telling her about some of these witches. But when he goes to leave, they can't find one of his gloves. And a few scenes later in the movie, he ends up dead. Okay. So it's a good idea to take care of your clothing, too.
I know. Don't leave anything behind. Okay. Even hair scrunchies and stuff. Be careful, y'all. Little rubber bands and everything. And you know what? Where's my rubber band? I keep a rubber band around my wrist because I'm always pulling my hair up. Don't ever drop these. I got hair on them. Okay. I mean, honestly, but the normal average person is not, first of all, not going to think about any of this stuff. And second of all, I'm too busy to even worry about it. Okay. So I probably have plenty of people doing voodoo on me and stuff. And does it always affect everybody, Dennis? That's my question. Even if you don't believe in it, can that still affect you? If somebody's like just say that lady, for instance, who does hair, say she was cut my hair and got some of my hair, and she's been putting me in freezers, and she's been doing all sorts of weird stuff to me, and or to an effigy of me, or whatever you call it. I don't know. And can that affect me if I don't believe in it? And if I'm like on a vibrating at a higher level than she is or something. And by that, I mean like spiritually protecting myself and not paying attention to her, that kind of stuff. And trying to be in a high vibe tribe. Can that affect me still, you think?
I'm trying to figure out what I did with my Jessica doll, but it's right here. Anyway.
Dennis, it's here. Hold on. Let me move your doll over. I'm just kidding.
A lot of this, and I have had death curses put on me. I've had several death curses put on me. The interesting thing about all this
Here's my Dennis doll. I'm just kidding.
The interesting thing that you got to do with this is that they attack you with the mind. First of all, they get you to believe what's going to happen, and they try to get it to be a self-fulfilling prophecy for you, kind of thing. So they work psychologically on you. If I were to put a death curse on you, I would definitely let you know it. That way, it starts working on your mind.
Oh, that's why somebody sent me a picture of a dead chicken one time. That's why they did that. I knew it. And I was like, you know what? I don't know why. And it was definitely being used in a ritual. And I was like, here's this random number.
The dead chicken itself.
That's the truth.
Very bad. Yeah. If it's the dead chicken itself.
I feel bad for the chicken. But then again, I was in the middle of eating a chicken sandwich when I saw it. So like, what, it's all about the intent, right?
Well done.
I know we do go through our share of chicken over here in my household.
Eat your chicken salad sandwich.
Yeah, chicken fingers, chicken fried rice, chicken, you name it. Chicken. I feel like I'm on Forrest Gump right now. Shrimp gumbo, shrimp kebabs. Yeah, we go through our share of meat over here.
Yeah,
But nonetheless,
good.
yeah, it's all the intention behind it, and
Get me hungry now. But
I
anyway,
know, right? I know. Listen. This is the Hungry Crew, the 1 o'clock show that we do on my daytime show. The whole chat will be full of people talking about eating tacos and sandwiches and whatever. So yes, everybody put your food emoji in the chat today, y'all. Everybody, what are y'all eating?
That's another way that people put spells on you. They put it in the food that you eat, so you have to be very careful about where you're getting your food at, too. That's interesting to think about. Be very careful with the food that you eat when they know where it comes from. And somebody's not put some stuff in there. That's why we say a blessing over our meal, by the way. That's where the blessing comes from. The fact is, it's either been has a spell cast on you, or it's got poison in the food. One or the other. Supposedly, the blessing's supposed to take care of that. But that's interesting too. You know, I think our ancestors spent a whole lot of time worrying about supernatural stuff going on. I think there was a whole lot of interest put in that, and I think they had some right reasons because of that, because a lot of stuff was going on and still goes on to this day. As a matter of fact, I did a show not long ago talking about the very big rise in witchcraft in the modern world has never seen before, is happening today. Why is that? Why are people turning to witchcraft? I think a lot of people are actually leaving the churches and looking for something else. But here's the thing about it, Jessica. They are looking for supernatural things, something above and beyond themselves, to believe in. Unfortunately, some people are not looking in the right places.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we all need something to believe in, that's for sure. And you also need to believe in yourself as well, because doggone it, you're good enough, you're smart enough, and everybody likes you guys. And I learned that little tidbit of wisdom from Saturday Night Live, but it rings true. Take care of yourselves, everybody, for real, because we are living in really weird times right now, right, Dennis? I think we've always been living in weird times, but it's just been kind of under the radar. And if especially if our military's been using, and militaries all over the world have been using werewolves potentially, and different types of cryptids. And I mean, that's not something that I ever heard my grandfathers talk about. They both fought in World War II. And my grandfather on my dad's side was a war hero. He went through, and I think he was in the 86th Division Infantry, and he went and
trying to be recruited by the CIA. I thought without doubt these guys are interested in this kind of stuff. They want this kind of stuff. They're very, well, I say very suspiciously interested in it. To me, it bothers me to think about it, because they've got, here's the bad thing about it, Jessica. They've got all the auspices they need for it. They've got plenty of money for it. That therefore makes them very dangerous with this kind of knowledge. You know what I'm saying? It's a very dangerous outlook for them to have, the governments of the world, to be involved in this kind of stuff, because they are able to pull it off. That's the bad thing about it. They have the people, the talent, the time, the money, and the equipment and everything else to pull it off with. Here's an interesting thought, and Jack Parsons was involved in a lot of this kind of stuff because he was a disciple of Aleister Crowley. Where does science end and magic begin, and vice versa? That's what I wonder about, and I think that's what they're involved in, that shady area between science and superstition, between science and the supernatural. I think we've lost your sound.
Sorry, I hit the mute button because I haven't. My son is homesick again today. By the way, I just had to go pick him up from school, so he's here coughing in the background. But you know, when it comes down to it, and you are working for a government in the military, let's say military budgets. My God, how big is the budget here in the United States for their military? And for all these science, well, we won't even go there because that's a fiasco right now here in the U.S. But however, they have like unlimited budget, right? With a lot of these programs, and they're able to go in there and get all the money they need to do all these weird experiments. And that's been the case. I'm sure it was the case in Germany back then. It's the case in the United States right now. It has been, and right under our noses, and maybe we weren't aware of it 100%. But it's all coming out right now. And when you have access to unlimited money, funding, I would just assume they're doing all sorts of weird experiments back then, and doing things that are just unconscionable, like just horrible experiments, like putting dog heads on man bodies, like human bodies, stuff like that. I don't know. I'm just saying. I'm not saying that's what they did, but it's just an example, right, Dennis? I mean, when you have the resources to do it, people are just it's on that line of like being sick and just science. Right? Sick or science. I don't know, like being demented and scientific. Some people just are here to push the boundaries. Maybe that's what I'm getting at. Some people are here to see how far they can push the boundaries. And when they have unlimited resources, they have carte blanche. They're not going to jail for it because they're working for the government. You know, they're gonna do some dark stuff, Dennis. I would assume.
Absolutely. And here's the bad thing. The thing that really bothers me about all this, like they have plenty of dark money to use and all this other stuff, and the auspices with which to do it. Why aren't they trying to do something to help mankind? Trying to maybe cure cancer or diabetes or kidney disease or whatever the situation. Why aren't they doing that? Putting all these billions of dollars into something like that instead of going into hybrid animals with people and all this other stuff. Why aren't they doing something good with that? You know, that's my question. Why? Why do they want to get into this stuff? I think because, Jessica, that there are certain beings already planted in our government, in our military, and in our science. The list goes on and on. We have been infiltrated by dark forces that are guiding us down a darker path, the wrong left-hand path that we should not be taking. And that's where they're trying to take us, though. And our government's falling in line with that. Our scientists are falling in line with it. Our teachers are falling in line with it. The list goes on and on and on. They're being led into this, away from the bright path that they could take. That would be a benefit to everybody. It's like what they used to say in the old superhero movies, you know, what such great power he had, and why didn't he use his talents for good instead of evil? And that's what the government's doing. They're using their talents for evil instead of good. And that's not good at all. It's not good for any of us. And the outcome's not going to be good for any of us. They're taking the wrong path, unfortunately.
You know what they're doing, Dennis? They're playing God. Power. They want that power. They want to play God. They can get away with it. They're going to. And I've seen all those experiments online. Have you ever seen or on TV? There's all sorts of experiments that have been done where people do experiments like they're in, was it like jail or prison? And like some of the people had to be prisoners. Some people had to be the wardens or something. And just there's a power dynamic. And when people were told to like hurt somebody, they would actually go and hurt somebody. It's like when they got people to get, it's all psychological. Okay. It's all psychological. And so when people are given a little bit of power, sometimes they take it a little too far if they think they can get away with it.
I sent you a thing the other day. Now, this is horrific to think about, folks. Okay. But they are taking the body parts of aborted children and placing them in rats as experiments. Okay. They are using dead children for experiments. Okay. Think about that. Okay,
And
that's
shots
very unsettling.
as
And
well.
this is something that science is condoning. Science is saying, "Oh yeah, this is okay." That's not good.
It's not good. And they're also putting those cells, those, let's just say fetal cells, in like vaccines and stuff too. So yeah. I know. It's a wild world we live in. And the more you know, the more you can grow. Okay. And yeah, the more you know, with the rainbow and the shooting star there. Okay. Um, it's really scary, and it's really sad. And a lot of us have had no idea what was going on, with that kind of stuff. But we do now. We do now. And man, this has been just a fantastic show today, Dennis. And I want to thank you for being here. I mean, do you have any final thoughts on these werewolves in World War II? I mean, there's got to be other accounts of it, I would think. I mean, I think we covered the main ones of werewolves potentially being used in World War II, or werewolves attacking people in that World War II era. But I don't know. Do you have any final thoughts on it today?
Well, if I were going to pick out one thing to be my super soldier, it definitely would be a werewolf. Okay, because like I said, it has all the great attributes you need. You have the perfect blend of animal and human. You have this horrific thing, this supernatural being with the mind of a man. So that means you can still control it to a certain extent, perhaps. Or you have that ability to control it. This is a perfect candidate for a super soldier, without a doubt. And I believe also, without a doubt, that the super soldier project is still going on, not only on this planet, but maybe our planet as well, for that matter. This is something that they have been seeking for a long time, something that they want. And it would not surprise me one day if you see a battalion of werewolves show up, or you see a squad of wolfmen that are keeping the peace somewhere. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me eventually if it is. Let me put it this way: every secret in on this planet, in this universe, one day will be revealed, and we'll see things for what they truly are. And it will not surprise me if werewolf soldiers show up in that equation.
Well, if you're hanging out with the Cryptid Huntress, you're going to hang out with some werewolves one day, because I'm going to have me a team of them. And yeah, people will not know when I strike it rich, but there will be signs. Okay. Oh man, this is great advice. Great show today, Dennis. Gosh, you never disappoint with all your information that you come and bring on the show, and I just love it. I really do. You are my resident werewolf over here. So thank you, Dennis. And
Proud to hell, man.
thank you. It's always fun having you here. And yeah, I mean, sometimes the content, like, of the topics that we talk about, it has a tendency to go really dark. It really does. And it's just the nature of the game. We're dealing with cryptids. We're dealing with things that will eat you. Okay, so we're gonna talk about it, but we're also going to have solutions, let's just say, to the problems, if there are problems out there with this stuff. So but yeah, it's all about shining light on it. And like I was saying earlier, my grandparents never talked about encountering werewolves in Germany or anywhere. My grandfathers both went all over Europe during World War II, and one of them was liberating concentration camps along the way, and never heard one peep about a werewolf out of him. So it doesn't mean it didn't happen. He was one little guy carrying a machine gun across Europe. Okay. But who's to say it happened? Who's to say it didn't happen? Who's to say? And there's really not a whole lot of explanations for that whole group during what was it called? The Winter War of 1939, and the Black Forest incident. with the howling and everything, I'd say it might have been werewolves, Dennis. I think it was werewolves, dogmen or werewolves or something. So yeah, and so yeah, you there are whistleblowers that have come out today. Someone in the chat had mentioned that Jeff Nadolny's channel. He had that fellow that was coming on there. I haven't seen it in a while, but there was a man named Victor, I think, that was coming on a show talking about how he trained cryptids. I think it was werewolves. He was like a werewolf handler for our military, I think, and talked about the whole cryptid breeding program and stuff. So I've looked into it. I've done a show on the Dogman breeding program, and I think that could potentially be real. Okay, so yeah, I don't know. I think that our military does use cryptids. I do.
Well,
I think they'd be crazy not to.
Absolutely, they wouldn't pass that opportunity up.
No, absolutely not. Nick Sylvester has been on the show a bunch of times, and we always talk about the government's use of cryptids. And he says, I think it's like 12 or 13 different types of cryptids are utilized by our government. And a lot of times it's for kidnappings. Okay. And even assassination attempts or assassinations.
Even talk of them using things from off-world, as we call them.
Mm-hmm.
Who knows what things they may have brought through portals, for that matter, for use.
That's right.
I have been told that they have containment areas for these things in underground bases that you would probably not want to see what was in them.
That's right. That's right. You and I were talking earlier before the show started, and you had mentioned something about, I've talked about cryptid containment facilities. Barry Littleton gave me a blind remote viewing target of a potential cryptid containment or like an anomalous species containment area. And I came into contact immediately when I got into that target with like a Lyran or some kind of cat being that was being held there.
Something to consider, Jessica. I think there's like 138 underground bases. Think about that. 138. Why do we need that many? And what are they for? There's something else going on besides that. So that would be the perfect containment area, would it not, for something that you were bringing out of the darkness?
Yes. Yeah. Well, they're whipping up stuff in the kitchen. Okay. In their laboratories. They got to do it somewhere. So it's probably down there. But I don't know. Maybe we'll have some more whistleblowers that come out this year. It seems to be the year of disclosure right now. We're getting a lot of disclosure. Somebody even sent me something to sign. It was like to put my name on something last night, and it was to sign a petition to ask some congressman to do like cryptid disclosure next. I was like, well, that's cool. I mean, I hope it happens, but I don't know. Yeah.
One thing we do have to consider with whistleblowers, okay, and we need to understand this. Some of them are planted to give us some wrong information, okay? So we have to be careful with our whistleblowers and make sure that they are really what they appear to be, because there is a large part of the government, Jessica, that is dealing in misinformation. I call it misidentification of things. Definitely to throw us off the track. Okay, they are engaging in distraction with us to get us. It's just like the old sleight of the hand thing. Watch this hand while I'm doing something with this hand over here. You don't see it. Okay, and that's the way the government's working. So we have to be very careful because we're being fed a lot of misinformation to misdirect us. Okay. In the way we need to be going. That's what they're up to. They're very clever at manipulation with misinformation.
Yes. Well, that's why you have your resident remote viewer right here. Her name's Jessica Jones, and she loves getting blind coordinate remote viewing targets. And so yeah. And speaking of which, I do have a remote viewing show tomorrow night, and I love getting those targets. Barry just gave me another target like yesterday, but I've got several to choose from for tomorrow night. We may be looking into that. It's like a tomb that I had remote viewed. It's not on our timeline. It's like something from millions of years ago. It's like a princess, okay, in a tomb. I don't know the whole background on it, but that was one of my targets. And so we may be going over that one tomorrow night, or whatever this is that Barry gave me. But yeah, it takes people, tuning in and getting on the frequency and like watching shows like this, like my channel, your channel, Dennis, we're putting out some pretty different, interesting information, right?
Let me ask you a question real quick.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever remote viewed the Tomb of Gilgamesh?
I have. I did. Yeah. I did a show with Brian Sang about that a while back. And that was one of my targets.
Yeah.
Yeah. The giants are waking up from what I've been told.
We need a book with all of your remote viewing things.
I do. It would be a volume. It would be like a Encyclopedia Britannica series. Like there's so many. I can't even. They're everywhere. I have targets all over my house. Like they're just stacked in piles because I don't have enough containers to put them in. I've done so much remote viewing. So yeah, that would be
books. Books are written that way, and then you have to put them together, sort of like a jigsaw puzzle. Whenever you got everything written down, you need to put it together, and it becomes a book.
Yes, for sure. Well, I could kind of put them into categories, and then write books. I don't know. I've got a lot of content. I've got a lot of stuff I could put out, but I'm too busy doing these shows, and I'm having a lot of fun doing that. Hey, Caleb, good to see you.
Well, maybe one day I can help you with it.
Yes. I said I needed a werewolf team, right? No, I'm just kidding, Dennis. That's great. I could always use your help. You are an established author. Can you tell the audience about your books, Dennis, and about your channel and what you got going on? You got a show tonight too. Tell the audience about it.
Well, tonight on Hunting the Shadows, we're going to have Brian Singh on, and with it, we're going to be getting into AI doppelgangers. Yes, you have probably been copied, okay?
Yeah.
And we're going to be talking about that tonight, and also have a show Thursday with Chantel Mayberg, Aquarius Rising Africa. We're going to be talking about end-time prophecies. That's going to be amazing. This is like a science fiction movie, folks. You got to see this. And we're going to be talking about that. And of course, on Friday night, we'll have Paranormal Point of View. I'll be reviewing some books and movies and stuff like that. And then Monday, with my good friend Gerald Fountain, I will be doing the road less traveled. And we always have an interesting road to travel on that show, definitely. So you check that out. And all of those shows are at 9:00 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, except for Shanty. Now, Shanty, that will be 12 noon tomorrow. Okay. And you can receive my books on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. You can reach me at DennisWCarroll.com. And I also have a Patreon and a Cash App if anybody wants to make a donation. And that's for Hunting the Shadows YouTube channel.
Yes, Dennis has fantastic shows, y'all. And speaking of which, we're talking about Brian. I just said Brian Sang. You can ask Brian about that. He actually comes on the show, and a lot of times when we're talking about the remote viewing targets, and so he and I did that show together on that. We also did a really cool show on satanic AI too with Arkeem Ra, and Arkeem Ra, who's been in the chat today, he's a super soldier. And we've been talking about super soldiers today. And I think Brian's probably done some time in those programs as well. But good friends of mine, and you're a good friend, Dennis. And yeah, it's fun working with everybody. And it's cool seeing you on Shanti's show too. Shanti's been in the chat today too with Aquarius Rising Africa. So thank you for being here, Shanti. And Caleb's in here too. Hey, Caleb. I've been on her show with Caleb, actually, Caleb Jade. And yeah, it's just a lot of fun, y'all. And I love connecting these dots. Okay, Dennis, I love connecting the dots, and we're able to kind of piece together the bigger picture when we all come together and we put our research and our experience together, and that's what's making everything count. Okay, and it's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing. Yes, I'm sorry. I know y'all can hear my son over here coughing. I got to go take care of him now, and get him on the mend. I don't know. Somebody was saying the fog was coming back. Oh no, Dennis. I hope we don't have the fog today. I know is it raining over there in South Carolina today?
Yeah, it is. It's very wintry out there today. It feels the temperature is definitely. But I think there's a lot of definitely weather manipulation going on. around the
Oh,
world.
yeah.
And I think it has an insidious purpose behind it, definitely. So if we do have the fogs and all that come back, we need to be very careful about that. And as for werewolves, always carry something silver just in case.
Oh, that looks like a gutting knife right there, Dennis.
Silver
What you
knife,
got?
actually. Yes.
That's one that's like you can flay somebody with that thing. Yeah. Yeah. Well, before we go today, let's what are some of the best ways to protect against werewolves other than just a knife? You really don't want to get too close. If you're going to have to stab it, that's you're already too close. You may not make it.
Well, yes, anything silver basically will keep the werewolf away, but it must be blessed silver. That's what makes it so powerful. Matter of fact, I even have some silver bullets around here somewhere. So it's best to keep something silver, definitely, and a blessed item. Also, wolfsbane, if you have any, carry that around with you. That supposedly will keep them away. You can wear the wolf angle, the angel we were talking about, the wolf angel. You can wear that. Supposedly that wards them away too. And I guess that would work because that was a way to trap wolves. So I don't think they would like to be confronted with that, definitely. And there are other types of things. Yeah, there you go, the wolf angle.
That'll protect you.
Yeah, and the best thing, one of the best things to carry, is sort of one of the holy plants like rosemary or frankincense or anything like that. So there are different ways you can protect yourself. Even garlic supposedly keeps werewolves away, not only vampires, but werewolves as well. Keep me away, definitely. Anyway, there are different ways, definitely, but the blessed items are supposed to be the best.
Okay, so anything that's blessed. Okay, some blessed.
Blessed medallion or whatever.
That's wonderful, Dennis. You hooked me up. I've got a couple of blessed medallions over here. I got a few now, so thank you so much for that. I am well protected over here. Yeah, just like yeah, I don't know why that vision of that lady poking that voodoo doll at that football game just came up in my mind. Oh man,
The main thing is you don't want to end up being a werewolf taco or anything.
a werewolf taco. A Bigfoot burrito, a Dogman burrito, or a werewolf taco. Yeah. A Bigfoot enchilada. Yeah, be careful, everybody. Don't do what I do. Okay, and you won't become a Bigfoot burrito, right, Dennis? Oh my gosh. Yes. Okay. Well, I hope everybody learned something today. I know I did. I think this was a really great show. Lots of great information in here. And we got a little history lesson today too. I love mixing the history with the the mythology or the legends and lore. I think it's all just fantastic. And so it's great. And the chat always adds to the whole conversation. Thank you all so much for everybody who participated in our chat today. And for being here. I want to thank all my moderators today. And thank you to, let's see, it was, Firewater by Design for that super sticker. I do appreciate that. And thank you to all my channel members as well. You guys, please stay safe out there. And, watch your back. Always keep your head on a swivel. That's so important right now. But do not live in fear. Okay. Just don't live in fear. I don't. Okay. And if I don't, y'all don't either. Okay. Doesn't mean like, don't be aware of your surroundings and stuff. Just don't live in fear. Don't let people scare you. Don't let these shows scare you either. Okay. That's why we got to laugh about it too. Cause if we're not laughing, we're crying, y'all. All right, Dennis, have a wonderful day, Dennis. We'll see you tonight over on your channel. What are you covering tonight on your channel? What's your topic?
Thank you so much. Always enjoy a conversation with you.
Thank you. Are you covering? What are you covering? What you said you got Brian on tonight, right? So I'll be in your chat tonight for sure, and we'll go over there and hang out with Brian Sang of the Full Disclosure Now conference, and the movement over there, and Mr. Dennis Carroll, our local werewolf. Okay, everybody, have a great day. I will see you guys back here tomorrow night at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 Pacific. Be there or be square, y'all. Okay. All right, everybody. Let's see if I can find my buttons. I'm on a new computer, by the way, Dennis. Okay, Dennis, have a great day, y'all. Sending love and light. Bye, y'all.